David, and this is Old News.
Hello, and I'm Russell, and it's good to be back.
Yeah, so this week we're going to be talking about Dolly the Sheep. But before we get into that, a little bit of banter and bollocks, as we described it a minute ago.
Ooh, there's the rude words again.
PG again.
Did you sort of discover anything about one of the platforms that people couldn't find us on?
Katie mentioned that couldn't find us on Podcast Addict, I believe. It does seem that some of the apps will only list you after you've got a certain number of episodes. I'm not sure about Podcast Addict because I couldn't find a huge amount about it, but I will keep trying to look and find out about it.
So if we just keep plugging at it and posting episodes, suddenly we'll get 1 million more listeners because we'll be listed on loads of places all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's the idea. We'll hit a critical mass. At which point Old News will explode and devour the world.
Speaking of taking over the world, I've been campaigning on my Dance No campaign. Finding funding and forming a coalition. Actually, it was funny, I was thinking about this yesterday. My rather brief career in the ballet industry.
Is this when you were about 4? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, I was about 4, and I, for a very short period, attended dance classes, which was probably one of the most bizarre things ever in the history of man.
It's certainly going to be a bizarre image for a lot of your friends now to think of.
Given the size of me, right? But this bizarre thing, how many... I don't know if it's like a common experience, but when I've talked about it to parents... Mum's always said, well, you did ask to go, it was your idea. You know what it is? I have no recollection of that at all. The only recollection I really have is the bit at the end where I was saying I didn't want to go anymore, and then being told, well, you've asked to go.
Well, I know at the time I was going to, because it was on Saturday mornings and I was going to band.
Oh, right.
You were probably wondering, where's David going or whatever, that kind of thing. And you maybe aware of people at school or play school or wherever you were at the time who were maybe going to dance class.
Probably, and just had a funny idea in my head. And
yeah. There's a possibility. Yeah.
Oh, well, my ballet career sort of ended after a couple of weeks, and that was the end of that.
The other thing I remember you asking about, which I know you've mentioned not remembering before, is wanting to play the piano. When you were really little, you desperately wanted to play the piano.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I had no clue that was the case.
Yeah.
How strange. Also, I think we should return to the treachery of the people of Barnard Castle.
Oh, right. The anti-Durham sentiment.
If you were to ever, there's this rebellious thing that they've got going. If you were to ever go there and demand, tell me the location of the secret rebel base, they were just pointing to go, it's the bloody castle, isn't it? But anyway.
It wouldn't be a particularly great place.
Oh dear. But I thought it's interesting that we've had that joke, but a future episode we're going to be doing about the devolution in the northeast.
All right.
I thought, oh well, there's a good place to jump off from for that episode. So you got that to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Despite their
another referendum sedition. Talk. Yeah.
The sedition. How dare they?
Old news, old news, old news.
Yes. We've had a little bit of nice feedback from a few people. Helen and Eva both got in touch via Facebook.
Yeah, and indeed Katie as well.
Katie did as well.
Who
yes.
said nice things. Said nice things to be in person over a curry as well.
Right, all right. And Steve, I believe, said nice things. Yes.
But if people want to talk about the issues, if people want to disagree with us and say what you're saying is utter nonsense on stilts and this is why, please do. Also feel free to stroke my ego and agree.
Discuss on Facebook, on the Facebook page or on Twitter. We will respond one way or another.
Should we just end all the podcasts with the word discuss and really sort of that unimaginative exam question?
GCSE exam question. Yeah.
Old news.
So should we talk about the main issue in hand then?
Yes, okay, yeah.
Today's episode is about Dolly the Sheep, which dates back to the 5th of July 1996, when she was born, although she wasn't sort of announced to the world until a little bit later. And I just find it bizarre that it's so long ago. It's more than 20 years ago now.
I have difficulty thinking of that as being more than 20 years ago. I still think of the 90s as not being that long ago.
Dolly lives until the 14th of February 2003, for 6 years. But I'm overjoyed to have gotten to the 3rd episode of Old News and managed to use the word taxidermy.
Yes. Yeah, I was looking forward to that as well. Because just so people are aware, I have actually done some research this week.
Excellent, so we might actually know what the hell it is we're talking about.
Yeah,
so because Dolly the Sheep is, what's the word, euthanized, is up, down.
I was hoping you were going to say taxidermied. But
Well,
yeah, okay.
And is then taxidermied and given to the National Museum of Scotland and is on permanent display there, presumably with a slightly surprised look that most things that are taxidermied have. But yes, overjoyed to have discovered the word taxidermy in my everyday life.
You know how sheep are quite dead-eyed when you look at them? Can you have a surprised, dead-eyed look from a cloned dead sheep?
Well, presumably. I don't know, you just put inappropriate eyes in it. I'll make it...
I'm sure they've done that. They put tiger eyes in it just for laughs.
Yeah. Just to discuss the background of this a little bit. Dolly the Sheep was born in the Rosslyn Institute, which is part of the University of Edinburgh. And isn't Rosslyn where the chapel is in...
Yes, that book.
Yeah, the Dan Brown, awful, dreadful, let's run around and explain things.
Yeah.
It's the Da Vinci Code.
The Da Vinci Code, yes.
Yeah, that's right. So, conspiracy, Dolly the Sheep is clearly a Masonic conspiracy, right? No, the tinfoil hat brigade will be listening. Let's not go down that road. It was sort of funded by the Ministry of Agriculture and a private company called PPL Therapeutics. You know, when you hear the word therapeutics, it's sort of one of these kind of meaningless words which are used to sort of all-encompassing for biological research. I always find it strange that people use words like that and then wonder why it sounds slightly sinister. And I think that drives sort of a figure. Where if it had been PPL cloning, well, at least it would be up there up front. Yeah. Presumably they do with other research, which is more to do with actual treatments and things. I don't know. And the two people concerned who sort of got the credit were Ian Wilmot and Keith Campbell. Their names will be remembered for a long time in science. But do you know why Dolly was called Dolly?
I do. I've got that written down.
So do you want to explain?
Yeah. Dolly was cloned from a cell from a mammary gland, or boob, in other terminology.
I think the word would be teat.
Teat. Oh, okay. Yeah.
In terms of sheep.
What or who has big boobs? Dolly Parton. Which just proves that even top geneticists have really rubbish sense of humour.
You'll find it slightly creepy.
Yes.
Yeah, it is slightly creepy.
A little bit creepy. But I can imagine them in the pub after a day of like hard work in the lab, splicing genes and shaking test tubes and whatever else they do, in their white coats. So, well, what are we going to call this? Oh, well, it's from a mammary gland. Oh, Dolly Parton. You can imagine the lols.
I can also imagine a lot of the female members of staff sort of being a bit disapproving.
I can imagine them just going...
That is generally what happens when blokes make off-colour jokes, isn't it? The more sensible females around the place do just roll their eyes and go, oh, for goodness sake. So there's this process which is SCNT, the type of cloning, which is somatic cell nuclear transfer. So this is this idea of you have an egg which you get from one sheep, you take the nucleus out, you then take an adult cell from another sheep, and as it happens from a mammary gland, you then fuse them so that the nucleus of the adult cell becomes sort of the nucleus of the egg cell. Yeah, the egg cell, and then you electrically stimulate it, which I find weird.
Yeah,
but presumably with very, very small wires or crocodile clips or something.
Just attached to the battery of a Ford Fiesta. Junk.
Well, that's infinitely funny because it's a Ford Fiesta. And then thereby you sort of stimulate cell division and growth, and you get the cytoblast, whatever it's called, and then you put that into a surrogate mother, and hopefully it takes, and you get this, hopefully it then becomes a fetus and develops and a sheep is born. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was kind of the fears that surrounded this, and I remember it got an awful lot of press at the time.
It did, yes.
Huge amount of sort of column inches devoted to it, and so there was sort of the scientific fears was that the donor sheep of the mammary cells was 6 years old, and so there was this idea, well, is Dolly
6 years old?
Yeah. Not genetically 6 years old, and there was something to do with like certain bits of the chemistry of the cell, the genes, or was already displaying that sort of age signature. But apparently the life expectancy of a Finn Dorset sheep, which is quite a strange mixture of sheep, isn't it? Finnish Dorset.
Well, when I was looking it up, I was wondering, does the Finn come from Finland? Because it's spelled Finn. Or is it named after Bob Finn, who lived in Dorset and bred sheep?
Did you discover either way, or...?
I didn't.
No, I didn't.
No. I didn't go down that particular rabbit hole.
Perhaps somebody more familiar with animal husbandry can enlighten us. So the average lifespan of one of those sheep is 12 years, and so this is, well, if she's 6, maybe she'll only live for 6 years and die. And funny enough,
that's exactly what
happened. But they reckon this might actually just be by chance kind
of thing.
Coincidence, yeah. So we might mention that a little bit later about sort of what happened since. And so these sort of fears were slightly dispelled about the sort of the aging. But there was an awful lot of fear generally. I remember sort of all the shouting about it. And
I remember lots of shouting in the press. Again, I wouldn't say the normal, general, everyday populace were particularly troubled by it. But in the press, the people who have opinions, yeah.
But what do you think people are frightened of, though?
Yeah, you just hear the word cloning and you think of, armies of clones turning up and, being led by some mad scientist. But it's all purely from bad science fiction films, really.
Yeah, I think this is one of these things where people's incredibly vivid imagination sort of dominates the tone of the debate.
It's also quite closely linked to the idea of, GMO foods and that sort of thing. People don't like the idea of genetically modifying vegetables and that sort of thing. Genetically modifying animals and then cloning animals. It's all on the same continuum. So if a genetically modified turnip is bad, a cloned sheep must be infinitely worse.
See, I don't remember at this stage whether GMO crops were really sort of on the agenda by that point.
I think they were. I think we'd already had, the fields being ripped
the initial
up. And
trials of it, and and people were, ooh, goodness. And I think some concerns about GMO are justified, but a blanket ban always seems a bit heavy-handed to me. Yeah, so I thought that was really sort of weird. One of the things which surprised me is the efficiency of this process.
How poor it is.
Yeah, it's appalling. So this was after the 277th attempt, right? Which just makes me slightly queasy.
Yeah, it does. There's a slight ethical question there, isn't there, about, well, okay, so you kind of brought life about 207, how many times?
276 times. It was the 276 failures, and then
and it failed all those times, so you had like a spark of life and then nothing again.
Are we worried about that because we're anthropomorphizing the sheep?
To a certain extent, possibly. You get into debates about when does life start and that kind of thing. I'm sure how often does sheep miscarry? It only makes you queasy because we're doing it rather than nature.
Well, that's true. Yeah, given the reproductive failure rates of things like humans, which is sort of really quite high.
Exactly. You wouldn't really mourn a miscarried lamb. A farmer wouldn't. You might go, oh, that's a shame.
I mean, what's disguised inside that number is we don't really know how many of these just failed in the Petri dish.
Yeah.
And it's weird, isn't it, how I think if it's just cells in the Petri dish, we are kind of okay with that. It's sort of when it becomes maybe something that's a little bit more visibly viable, maybe it's as you say, miscarrying a fetus, then we start to feel queasy. And it's quite weird because in the end, it's just sheep, right? We eat them. We grow them purely to just slaughter them and eat them, and they're very tasty. I think so much of these debates around sort of animal rights, I suppose, well, not rights, but the ethics around animal testing does tend to centre on the fact that we can anthropomorphise certain things. And sheep are woolly and, look cute.
And cute, unless you get too close, yeah.
Yeah, and they have the dead eyes, right?
Yeah.
The sheep with the dead eyes. It's to me, it seems like a very sort of emotional debate that doesn't seem to be very well grounded in any sort of facts.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, right, that kind of forces me into kind of a binary thing. Either I'm perfectly okay with all kinds of meddling, genetic or otherwise, and that's fine, who cares?
Yeah.
Because, it's just resources for us to fiddle with. We are the masters of our domain. Or it puts me into another one, which leads me down another sort of route that sort of says, well, all these things are morally problematic, we shouldn't be fiddling with them. But the end point of that debate is being anti-abortion and things. When you move from the animal world to the human world, there is one continuum. And I find it hard to justify the halfway argument.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why we have ethics committees and stuff like that, because you do have to somehow decide where is the line. I actually think that's fair enough. There are some things that would make me queasy. There are some things that don't. And I think it's okay for the public at large to have a debate about where that line is, and also to have a group of experts who are the arbiters of, that say,
the decisions on
well, this, for now, always having it open. That's something that does seem to get forgotten in this kind of debate, that it's always open to change. So we can say, well, this is where the line is, but in 2 years' time, we might decide, no, we didn't quite get that right. Let's move that.
Somebody might come with a new research proposal, and you revisit the same questions again, and you might say, no, in light of what happened the last time, or That is true. It's kind of episodic like that.
Yeah.
Sort of the events since, which I didn't realise that Dolly had 6 lambs.
Yes.
Yeah, so a single, twins, and then triplets.
Yeah.
Triplets is quite unusual, isn't it? Isn't that generally quite strange for sheep, or often is fatal to sheep? So presumably because she's being looked after and whatever indoors, that she survives that. And the other folk then have gone on, and particularly the Koreans apparently have been very successful cloning pigs. I've got a list of animals here that have been cloned since. You've got pig, deer, horse, bulls, a type of Asian wild bull, which is a banteng.
Okay.
A banteng bull. And a mouflon, which is a type of wild sheep. Mouflon sounds like some sort of artificial fibre. A nylon
resistant
sheep.
to fire.
Yeah, nylon sheep. Yeah, Kevlar sheep. That's
first bulletproof sheep.
Yeah. Well, apparently he's one of the ancient ancestors of sheep. But there's been a few other things which they've tried and failed. It hasn't worked. There's another sort of form of wild mountain sheep that didn't work. So this technique obviously has some
limitations for some reason.
Sort of boundaries on it. So despite all the sort of oh my goodness, no, the armies of sheep are going to take over the world, a la New Zealand, then it just isn't going to be the case. There's just not that many animals where this is going to work, and it's extraordinarily inefficient. Its efficiency changes species to species. And then the latest thing, I think one of the things that attracted me to the topic to do now was that Dolly the Sheep appeared in the news just recently. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't. No.
Right, okay, so this was a couple of weeks back now, and that they then developed some more clones from the same genetic stock.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So you've got 4 sheep, and they were all fine, and they've led full lives that didn't have the health problems that Dolly did.
Yes.
That just says that Dolly was just a little bit of an ill sheep. And so you got Denise, Daisy, Debbie, and Diana, which is the people's clone sheep of our hearts. Because we all remember when Diana was sat in front of the Taj Mahal looking lonely and going...
And dead-eyed.
Yeah. I go, but I'm a clone sheep. Why am I in front of the Taj Mahal?
Old news.
And I know you've looked a little bit about bringing
animals back from the dead, which, when you think about cloning, that's one of the things you want to think about, isn't it? bringing extinct animals back. Mammoths.
Mammoths.
We all want mammoths.
Well, ages ago, I posted a Facebook status because there was something in the news about bringing back woolly mammoths, and it's one of these perennial news stories that comes back every 10, 15 years. I remember reading it in a Reader's Digest book from donkey years ago as a kid, and I was saying, I really want a pet woolly mammoth. And there was a friend of mine who was posting going, no, it'll all seem like a good idea, and then your mum will end up having to feed it. And,
you'll ignore it. Yeah.
But I quite always fancied the idea of, this is a well-developed fantasy, by the way, of having a woolly mammoth curled up to sleep at the foot of the bed. I think it'd be fantastic.
Well, when I was at school, I read a story in a reading book. You remember reading books?
Reading books to be read.
Yes. But they always had like little stories in, maybe 10, 12 pages long. And one of them was about a boy who'd come across like the last surviving mammoth. And of course it was a young mammoth. That always made me wish there was still mammoths. And it was kind of vaguely based on, I guess just before the time they'd written this story for this book, one of those mammoths had been dug out of the tundra, the permafrost.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Because there was pictures at the end of the story, there was a little bit of information of what mammoths were, and there was pictures of this mammoth being dug out of the permafrost in Siberia. And that always made me want mammoths. Yeah, just to get back to that sort of issue, get back to what we were talking about. They've actually already tried. First of all, they've tried with endangered species, something called a gaur. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, or a gaur, Gaur, which is a big bison-like creature. That's on the endangered list. They've actually cloned. I couldn't find enough information about it, but they've certainly cloned one. They may have cloned more.
Right.
But they've had a go at cloning some actual extinct species. They're all recently extinct species, because obviously that's where you can get the best DNA from. So the Pyrenean ibex.
Right, so this was in an institute in Aragon in Spain, the north of Spain.
A creature that became extinct in the year 2000, cloned in 2009.
Right.
Lived for a massive 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Before dying of lung
defects. Yeah. It's really sad, isn't it, that to have that happen, to have something that lived for a few minutes and really suffered?
Yeah, it must have really suffered. And also, from a creature that had become extinct kind of makes it even sadder for some reason.
It's quite mournful that we should let a species become extinct, especially one in continental Europe, a large mammal species that we haven't been able to save. And then to have this sort of forlorn hope almost that's sort of being dashed.
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll try it again.
They also did it in Australia with gastric brooding frogs. Exactly what a gastric brooding frog does for the environment, I don't know. Yeah. But again,
presumably it broods its frogs in its stomach rather than having tadpoles and things floating about the place.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is curious.
Yeah. Also recently extinct. A marsupial frog.
Oh, anybody who's a biologist will be jumping up and down going, what are you on about?
Jumping up and down like a marsupial frog would.
Marsupial frog would, yeah. Well, actually, given that marsupials are famed for sort of having that jumping action, wouldn't a frog being a marsupial be the opposite way and sort of not jump?
Or what, sort of crawl around? Isn't it toads that crawl around?
Oh, it is, yeah, that would just be a toad, wouldn't it?
Yeah, marsupial toad. Okay. Extinct since 1983. Also died quite quickly, died after a few days, so not as fast as the ibex, but none of them survived beyond 3 days. But yeah, so there's projects, there's more than one around the world to do this sort of thing.
What's that big organisation, the biggest one that sort of has that list of species they'd like to bring back?
Well, the one I came across was the Long Now Foundation,
right,
which is a foundation set up in San Francisco. You can imagine.
What a surprise.
You're already imagining. But yeah, they're all about long-term thinking. They've got a project about building a clock that can't be destroyed, or would be very difficult to destroy.
Right.
With thinking around, it'll last for 10,000 years, and made out of materials that would be easy to find.
I'm sure I've heard of that project before.
Yeah, they've got all kinds of wacky stuff like that. But one of them is their Revive and Restore project, which is about cloning to bring back animals, or bring animals back from the brink of extinction as well.
Right.
So not just bringing them back from extinction.
I could certainly support that, in terms of species that are closely on the edge, and species that we could prove have been made extinct through the actions of man, like particularly in modern times. So they have a long list of things, don't
Yeah,
they?
they've got a massively long list,
including things like the dodo and
all the classic things that everyone would want to bring back: the dodo, the mammoth, the giant moa from New Zealand.
Right.
Of course, that would kill all the sheep, so maybe they won't do that.
It's okay, we can just clone more sheep, right?
Yeah, the auroch will be familiar to anyone who's read Game of Thrones, because it was sort of the predecessor of the modern cow.
Oh, right, okay.
A giant bull-like creature. The Tasmanian tiger.
Tiger, yeah. That's something I was thinking about this the other day when I was looking into this episode. And I was thinking the Tasmanian tiger would be something I would love to see. One of the things which intrigues me, though, because presumably on that list will be the quagga, which is it's like a species of zebra.
Yes,
one of the species
it is. Yes, I didn't write it down, but I'm remembering back. Yes.
And that very famously, the last one died in a zoo, didn't it? In the sort of the late 1800s, and there's a very famous photograph of that quagga, isn't it? Yeah, there's actually a side project now to breed a quagga.
Right,
because the genetics suggests that the quagga is essentially sort of a subspecies of zebra.
Yeah,
and thereby just through selective breeding, we could get back to a pseudo quagga. So it says that some of these technologies aren't strictly necessary.
You could do it through selective breeding. Yeah. But then what's the difference between selective breeding and, well, I suppose...
And genetic manipulation. Generally, cloning being part of that.
It's just long-term genetic manipulation.
It's why I've never understood this whole playing God argument. Like, surely isn't like the manipulation of fire, isn't that playing God in a way? Like, up to the point...
Yeah,
where man could create fire on purpose. Fire was something that only happened through,
lightning strikes
and volcanic action, I guess, perhaps. I don't know, it just seems like such a simple objection. Oh, you're playing God. But that could sort of prescribe a whole load of stuff.
Yeah.
It just seems like a very empty argument, and the moment anybody says it makes me... I switch off, actually, and I shouldn't, but I do. I switch off. And I would rather hear what's the actual justification. We seem broadly agreed that animals that are extinct through human action would be candidates to bring back. Would you be tempted to do the Jurassic Park thing?
No, because I've watched Jurassic Park. Again, that's one of those things everyone would love to do it, wouldn't they? Surely everyone would love the idea of going and patting a triceratops. Should we? Well, no. All I can think of is the suffering that would happen, because what we all forget is animals are dependent on their environment. So a triceratops evolved to live amongst ferns and brackens. There wasn't flowering plants.
Grass didn't exist. Yeah.
They had a certain biota in their digestive tracts that we wouldn't be able to replicate.
Yeah, so they might be born and then just very, very quickly
die because we can't
infections and
we can't look after them correctly. They can't survive in the modern world because millions and millions of years of other evolution has gone on.
And it seems like there's a certain there's a circular element to it. Animals evolve, animals live out their lives, and when the environment changes and they haven't adapted, they die out, and it's quite natural. So I think I'm into that sort of territory of like we're meddling with natural processes, which sounds like we're playing God, and I've just objected to that argument. Mm-hmm. But there is something strange. I must admit, I've always wondered about like the plausibility of the whole Jurassic Park thing. Surely, you would spend all day doing 500 cloning operations and find you've got like 500 mosquitoes.
Yes. Yippee!
Hey, that's just been really very, very annoying. But it is curious though. I would love to see one.
You would love to see a dinosaur, yeah.
On your point of the suffering of these animals, just like the woolly mammoth, which we'd all love to see because presumably they're cute and woolly. They're
like the ultimate elephant, aren't they? Because people like elephants.
Yeah, elephants are endearing.
Elephants in fluff.
Yeah.
Wow, you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's hug a woolly mammoth. Presumably they're social animals.
Yes.
Elephants are social animals, and just imagine just having one lonesome mammoth
Yeah,
on
you'd have
his or
to.
her own.
You'd have to clone a herd, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would have to have at least a few, and then you've got problems of, well, then how do you make a breeding population if we want to sustain them?
Yeah, because I suppose then you get into genetic problems in the population.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this is the problems of breeding endangered species all over again, isn't it? You know, they have this problem of co-sanguine sort of rules. But so which literally takes us on to like the last bit I wanted to talk about. We've kind of gone into the more speculative realm, but that's what I like about this subject, is that it's all things that are technologies which seem plausible, and therefore, you know, what will be the next step after that? And talking about humans, are you opposed to clothing humans? Are you open to it? Do you think it would have value?
I'm open to it in terms of things like it could be seen as a way around problems.
Yeah, like fertility.
Fertility problems, that's what I'm trying to think of,
Yeah.
yes. Ethically, I don't see a problem with that. When you get into the realms of, well, either cloning just for the sake of it, but I can't see anybody doing that anyway,
No.
or cloning for spare parts, I find that a little bit icky, although I'm not sure why.
Okay, so if you could clone something that didn't have a head, didn't have a brain, it was just tissue,
Just
you were
meat.
allowing to grow as an arm or
Yeah.
an ear or whatever.
But the sensible part of my brain is saying, well, yeah, it's not a human if it doesn't have a brain. And, you know, it means if I lose an arm, I can get a spare sewn back on. But it's still...
What if it just has like a stem? A brain stem? Maybe it's only, you know,
What? Like
partially conscious?
an insectoid human.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. That's properly horrifying.
Yeah, there's a whole spectrum there, isn't there, where you might go, well, I'm okay with this. Oh, it's just an ear, it's just a piece of cartilage or whatever, a new knee for somebody so they can walk. That all sort of seems fine. But then you're kind of into a strange place as well. Could we grow sort of new nerve tissue to make people walk again, or, you know, paraplegics? I think that's kind of strange. Growing spare parts is a very weird world. I think we're nowhere near having a sort of a moral construct around that.
Yeah.
And I think the arguments about it will be very similar to the abortion debate. You know, at what point does this thing we're growing in a dish, at what point is it conscious? At what point do we say it's okay to harvest it?
Yeah.
Cut it up and kill it?
But also, if it's been cloned from me, is it just me?
Yeah. Yeah, and would you be the owner, the person with the ultimate authority?
Yeah. But then if it's got some kind of consciousness, it can't be me.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just an arm, yeah, I would say I could possibly have some claim on that. It's my genetic makeup. But yeah, if it's got some consciousness, even a low amount.
Yeah, I mean, and how much is that? I mean, if you were to touch it on the end of its fingers and you could measure a nerve response, that's absolutely the minimal sort of level of consciousness, isn't it? In a way, it's like basic stimulus response you might expect from single cell life. Is that enough to make you go, oh dear, I'm a bit worried about this? And so, yeah, there's a certain ick factor, and the ick factor isn't really enough, is it, you know, to conclude a debate. It's often the starting point, but for a lot of people it tends to be the finishing point of discussions, because they just go, ick.
Yeah.
And that's
Let's
it.
have lunch.
Yeah. Let's have lunch. It's okay. So another sort of hypothetical. So it was talked a bit about reproduction. If you can't have children, so you got two parents, or even a single parent, who do you clone? Do you clone the parent? Would you clone a third party and then act as a surrogate?
Or do you take cells from both, clone them, first one which happens to work, so then you get in the luck of the draw, that's for the one that gets implanted? That's how I would do it if I was on the ethics committee.
That seems a little arbitrary to me.
But that's what life is. Life's arbitrary.
Oh, isn't that just... no, I don't accept that at all, because that's just a manifesto for being totally amoral, like in all cases. Like, I'm going to stab you in the chest. Oh, well, that was arbitrary.
Yeah, well,
the universe is arbitrary.
If you think about this subject, though, the sex of your child at the moment is chance. Yeah. So why not the genetic makeup of your child is all to do with chance. Yes, it's 50-50, but which ones are which?
But it also depends on this sort of blending that happens.
Yeah.
Whereas here we're specifically excluding that, aren't we? It's going to be binary thing, one or the other, and this child is neither going to be tall nor short or whatever, or like have mum's nose and father's ears. It's going to be one person or the other exactly. Do you not think that would be really weird in terms of relationship, like trying to raise that kid?
I don't see why it would be any more weird than anything else. Especially if you don't know, because the child, we all have this image that a clone will look exactly the same as its progenitor. Would that be the right word?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
But it won't, because environmental factors affect that. So you're not going to know.
Yeah.
I bet you could, like theoretically, obviously, clone a child and it be of the mother, let's say. But I bet people could still say, still got his dad's eyes.
Oh, I suppose. Yeah.
Because we will see things like that in
even though
people.
They're not true.
Yeah.
And then obviously even more speculatively, and I think this is interesting, is if these technologies become combined with other things. So for example, say you have a child that dies very, very young of a genetic disease, and the scientist says, or the doctor says, your child has just died, we can take a sample, we can clone this child and take out the genetic disease.
Ooh. Yeah, oh dear.
Then this becomes a little more weird, because I think a lot of people would instinctively say, no, that's terrible, we shouldn't be replacing dead children with copies of themselves. But I imagine a lot of parents in that position might be extremely tempted.
Yeah.
And what about their rights? Would they not have rights to say, well, yes, I love this child very much, I would like to have this child back?
I have not thought on that subject at all. I would need to ponder this longer than we have in
the space
a short podcast.
Of a couple of, so maybe that's the kind of question we could get feedback on, because it's an interesting one.
Old news.
It's interesting how all the debates we're having now are very similar to the debates we had 20 years ago when Dolly the Sheep
first arrived.
Well,
yeah, we haven't come to any conclusions.
Well, we haven't come to firm conclusions, but it also says that technology hasn't really exploded in the way we thought it might. In terms of sort of the animals, and I notice in all this debate, almost all the animals we've talked about are rather furry or feathered.
Yes.
With the exception of
the frog.
The gestational, whatever it was.
Gastric brooding frog.
Gastric brooding frog.
My favourite kind of frog.
Yeah. And it seems weird that the first thing we talk about is animals we can easily anthropomorphise, and then the debate immediately jumps to humans. And actually, we're nowhere near that point yet, are we?
No.
Old news.
Do we want to wrap it up there?
We can do, yes. Yeah.
Right, so should we do our usual thank yous? A thank you to bensound.com for providing the theme music to Old News, available at bensound.com under Creative Commons.
And thank you to Peter Kitson for providing his voice.
If you want to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter at Old News Pod.
You can go to our website, which is www.oldnews.podbean.com.
And also you can email us at oldnewspod@gmail.com.
Or just search Old News Podcast on Facebook.
I've noticed if you write in Old News Podcast in Google, are we the fourth result or something? We're getting there.
I haven't tried that.
We might eventually end up at the top of that search.
All right, yeah.
Please subscribe.
Yes.
Share.
Yeah, please share. Please discuss things on the Facebook.
The Facebooks.
Oh my word!
Facebook
how old am I?
used to be called the Facebook.
I know it was.
Didn't it?
Yeah, when it first came in. So yeah, on Facebook or on Twitter. But also, please share. Please share us and rate us if you're listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher. Please rate us 5 stars.
Wow,
preferably.
This really does sound like begging.
It does.
Oh, well.
I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I've greatly enjoyed that discussion.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, it was good. So I've been Russell.
I am still David.
Good night.
We're going to make that joke every week.
Yeah, I know we are. That's right.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio.